According to the straw poll that was conducted this Saturday, Governor Leon-Guerrero, we will begin with you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mana and Phil. It's exciting to be here with everyone streaming us at home and on their phones, and to have this chance to discuss the issues with my opponent. When Josh and I ran for office 4 years ago, the problems were well known because it was the same story from every election in recent history. Our government struggled under a crushing deficit. Taxes were raised on the backs of the small businesses. Families waited months for their tax refunds. We lost teachers, nurses, and police officers faster than we could recruit them because they hadn't received a meaningful raise in years. Government infrastructure was crumbling, yet despite these challenges, Josh and I were never more confident in Guam's future. Not only because of our commitment to hard work and smart solutions, but because we know Guam's people always fight our way back. Your faith in our future helped us keep our promises. We eliminated an $82 million deficit without borrowing. Your tax refunds are now paid within weeks for the first time in decades. Teachers, nurses, and law enforcement officers finally got much-deserved raise as they continue to nurture and secure us. And most small businesses now pay a lower tax than any time in the last 30 years. And all this in the midst of the worst health and economic crisis in Guam's modern history. COVID-19 stole too many lives and livelihoods. And now, just as we are beginning the path of recovery, a global issues thousands of miles away are piling more pain on our small island. But tonight, I tell the people of Guam that our sacrifice has not been in vain. Businesses are finally reopening. Jobs are coming back. Tourists are starting to return. And hotels are coming alive. Unprecedented military and government spending is already lifting us up. And it is going to continue at a record pace. This debate is about where Guam is headed, and I hope tonight to show you how our administration has delivered, keeping our people safe and investing in revitalized infrastructure, new programs to help families to buy their first home, universal health care, basic internet for all, new money for child care, better schools, and new hospital and new industries that will diversify our economy. All achieved while keeping our finances stable and our children's future safe. The big question of this election is, who do you trust to keep Guam moving forward?
Good afternoon. I'm Ken Leon-Guerrero, and welcome to my point of view. Now, in the intro, we heard the governor give her opening address, and I couldn't let that address pass without making an observation. And that observation is the following quote that I would like to share with you. We know they are lying to us. They know we know they are lying to us. We know they are lying to us, and they keep lying. One of my favorite political quotes by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I slaughtered that last name, but he's a famous Russian author. And the reason I say that is because, as we heard in the package, Governor Leon-Guerrero trumpeted what she felt were the accomplishments of her administration in her opening statement. But you have to ask yourself, who she's lying to. And the reason I say that is if we go back to her campaign brochure, her 50-page campaign brochure talking about her plans for the future of Guam, and we take a look at what she promised to do, compare that to what she has done, then we will see the relevance of that quote by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, because it's a pack of lies. Now, I say that in context because we're talking about politics here, and most politicians will say what they feel they need to say to get elected, and then once they get into office, it's a totally different ballgame. And that's our fault. That's the fault of voters, because we are the ones that let the politicians lie to us. We're the ones that vote for them, even though we know they're lying to us. And when they come up for re-election, we know they lied, but we still vote for them anyway. The only way things on Guam get better is if we start holding politicians accountable for the campaign promises they make us to get our vote, and then we judge them by their actions, how hard they tried to keep their promises, because we have to be realistic. Sometimes they promise something that sounds good to us as voters, we really want as voters, but they aren't able to get it done. But at least if they try, then, you know, they have a leg to stand on. But all too often, politicians will make a promise and they will not keep it, and they won't even try to keep it. So let's start by looking at the campaign materials that the Leon-Guerrero Tenorio administration put out. As we can see here in their preamble, they want to provide leadership based on honesty, transparency, inclusion, and fairness to provide our people with a government worthy of their trust. We don't have to look further back than the beginning of the pandemic to realize that that all was a lie. During the pandemic, we saw a governor who issued an executive order preventing public hearings, preventing public oversight on meetings, where millions of taxpayer dollars, now granted they were federal dollars from U.S. mainland taxpayers, but they were still taxpayer dollars being spent. And she prevented oversight on that. She held a series of non-bid contracts. There were even cases where they awarded money without even a bid or a contract. And then she imposed her version of martial law on us by slamming the island down with roadblocks. And I challenged those roadblocks, and on the day we were supposed to go to court, she ended the roadblocks. So let's draw a line through the transparency and a government that the people of Guam can feel is worthy of our trust, and go down to number 2, where she promised to develop policies that would serve the long-term interest of our people, ending the short-term political focus on the next election. Woo. Was that a rotten egg? And here's why. Because just in the last few months, we have seen nurses getting pay raises by executive order. We've seen police officers getting pay raises by executive order, and recently we saw teachers get pay raises by executive order. No doubt whatsoever that these groups of people were deserving of pay raises, But why didn't the governor give those pay raises back in 2020 when she had nearly $500,000 in her bank account? Why didn't she give the pay raises back then when the stress levels were the highest, the work commitment the heaviest, and the risk and fear the most stressful? Why did she wait until just months before the campaign season and months before the election to start handing out those pay raises? Could it possibly be that she was putting short-term political focus ahead of serving the people of Guam? Well, that's the way it looks when you consider the fact that the pay raises that she's given were by executive order, were not in consultation with the legislature. The governor has made no move or effort whatsoever to restructure the governmental operations so that those pay raises could remain in effect after the federal funds are gone, which will be very soon. So we're 0 for 2. Let's go to the third item in her preamble. Provide needed reforms for our government to stabilize its finances and redirect resources to improve education, health care, public safety, job creation, infrastructure, sustainability, and economic opportunity. Those are nice things if she had actually done it, but that's not what she has done. She has sat on top of those federal funds to the exclusion of using them for the benefit, for anything that would benefit Guam long term. I first got involved with Guam Memorial Hospital, I think it was 2012, when there was a proposal to remodel the labor and delivery room for $5 million. And to this day, the labor and delivery room have not been remodeled. And we're talking about 2 administrations. This started in the Calvo administration, nothing was done, and now we're 4 years into the Leon-Guerrero Tenorio administration, nothing still done. We all know our infrastructure is collapsing. All you have to do is drive around, and we didn't see any paving or road repairs take place until just recently. And as we saw in the governor's opening statement, she's more than willing to take credit for those repairs that are taking place using federal funds. And creation of sustainability, haven't seen anything there to create anything sustainable or anything to create economic opportunity. In fact, we saw the opposite. We saw her take actions that shut down the economy so hard that thousands of people were out of work for nearly a year. So, let's take a look at earning a government worthy of your trust. All we have to do is look at the entire situation around the beginning stages of the pandemic, when admittedly it was new. We didn't know what it was, and it was very stressful and very fearful. And we set up a quarantine. Great idea, set up a quarantine facility. But instead of staffing it with the employees of the hotel, we brought in the National Guard, and we staffed it with a number of highly paid executives from the Leon-Guerrero Tenorio administration who partied like it was 1999 on the 19th floor, getting double, triple pay, hazardous pay, God knows what other pays they got. But that didn't do anything to create a government worthy of our trust. Then there was the improving economic growth, wages, development, and opportunity. We haven't seen that happen. The only growth in wages we have seen was in the first month of the governor's administration, when she gave out pay raises to a lot of her directors, deputy directors, exempt employees, hired a bunch of people for positions that were vacant under the Calvo administration, and the government ran just fine with those vacant positions, but they were exempt, they paid a lot of money, and they went to politically well-connected insiders. So we didn't see any economic growth there. The minimum wage increase was very, very minimal for everybody else, but for government employees, government executives, it was very good. And in the finest political tradition, they started announcing spending millions of dollars to study all of government in Guam to adjust the pay raises for all those not covered by the executive orders, just in time for the election. So that doesn't serve the people of Guam. So let's go to the next one. Providing safe neighborhoods and combating crime. I think this headline says it all. Court records 24 pounds of meth mailed to a Jonia home. And if you'll recall, during the administration of Leon-Guerrero Tenorio, we have seen the drug problem skyrocket to the point where the price of meth has fallen dramatically, and we literally have meth growing on trees, if you believe this story right here. So in spite of years of asking the different administrations and legislatures to do something about the drug problem, they haven't done anything about it. The problem's getting worse. Thousands of families have been hammered by the growing epidemic, and it's gotten to the point now where people I never thought would ever buy guns are buying guns because they fear in their being in their homes. Fixing our schools and our education system. Wow. This is something that has been talked about and talked about and talked about and talked about ever since I came back to Guam in 2007. There's been a lot of talk, nothing's been done, especially in this administration. In fact, it's interesting that even with, billions of dollars of federal funds dropped on the island, our governor still has a hard time finding funds to fund our school system, GCC, and UOG. In fact, she balanced the budget. She's very proud of eliminating the deficit, but at what cost? I'll tell you what the cost is. We've got school systems that are running in the red right now because they haven't received their money. Now we're looking at using federal funds to cover the shortfalls in the school systems. That's not a very good record to stand on. Now, developing affordable, available, and accessible healthcare system. That one went out the window right on the first month of her administration when she introduced Bill 30. Had Tina Munya Barnes introduce Bill 30. The net result of Bill 30 was it gutted Guam's only public hospital. It financially destroyed Guam Memorial Hospital to the point where taxpayer subsidies have almost tripled during the Leon-Guerrero Tenorio administration. In fact, the law was ruled illegal after the fact, but not after $20 to $30 million of damage had been done to Guam Memorial Hospital, further increasing the facility's rate of deterioration, and in the long run is going to cost taxpayers a lot more money. And at the end of the day, what we ended up was 2 struggling hospitals that are receiving taxpayer funds instead of 1. Our healthcare system didn't get any better. In fact, it got a lot weaker because more people lost their healthcare insurance during the pandemic, which threw the burden on the taxpayers through the MIP program. And a lot of people just quit going to the doctor, which we later saw was a bad idea as Guam's death rate climbed during the pandemic. And not because people were dying of COVID, they were dying of underlying health issues. They just happened to have COVID with it. Which takes us to infrastructure and affordable housing. Anyone who's driven around the roads on Guam knows our infrastructure is not good. You go to the public restrooms at any of the public parks, and most of the time they're padlocked shut. If they're uh, restrooms there at all. Affordable housing is a joke here on the island. We are now seeing the next exodus of our young people, and one of the biggest reasons that our younger people, our skilled people are leaving our island is because, number one, lack of affordable housing. We have a very, very high percentage of homes on Guam that are multi-generational, sometimes 2 and 3 generations, simply because there are not enough affordable homes on Guam. And none of the administrations in the last 20 years has made affordable homes a priority, including this one. You see, there's more to life than working for a living, but with our cost of living that is skyrocketing, and it's gotten to the point where most people have to have 2 or 3 jobs just to afford the basics in life: a roof over their head, utilities, and food for their family. And that's not even counting the luxuries like cars, cell phones. Those are extras, and it's very hard. And that lack of affordable housing is getting worse by the month, because as the military buildup takes place and more military personnel come to the island, they are taking more of our affordable quality homes off the market. And as more people lose their jobs and are unable to, or don't get enough hours to be able to afford rent, they go on to Section 8 housing. And now we have Section 8 housing through GURA taking more affordable homes off the market. So those who are lucky enough to have jobs are finding their quality of life dramatically deteriorating under this administration. Remember, these are their commitments to us, and so far they haven't made good on a single one. They lied to us, and now they are lying to us again, trying to get us to vote for them. So moving along, strengthening families and communities. We're talking about an administration that basically threw the population of Guam under the bus, because before we had the pandemic unemployment insurance, we had 75–80% of our workforce out of work, no food, no money. We were handing out foods at distribution centers, and we had people waiting in line for hours. Some people would park in line and wait overnight, hoping that they could get to the head of the line before the food ran out. And then later on, when the federal funds started to flow and the governor hijacked the RISE Act and created her All RISE Act and turned it into a gladiator sport by guaranteeing checks for a limited number of people on a first come, first served basis. So she made welfare into a gladiator spectacle. And that was in the very, very worst example of serving the people of Guam, something that nobody should forget. Nobody who sat in those lines for hours and hours should ever forget that experience. And recognizing our veterans for their service. All we have to do to see the failure on this campaign promise is drive around to Ganyan to Mooning and see the number of homeless vets or veterans out there begging on the streets for food. Even during the All Rise application process, we had veterans sleeping in their cars in a desperate effort to make sure they were among the first ones on that first come, first serve to get an application in for $800 on the All Rise Act. It's something that we've known for years here on Guam, that the Veterans Administration, even though Guam has one of the highest percentages of populations serving in the military, we get probably the lowest level of Veteran Administration services on our island, and you would expect the administrations, the government of Guam, to pick up the slack. I mean, if they can spend $15 million on FESPAC, they surely could kick a few $1,000,000 into setting up programs to help take care of our homeless veterans. our disabled veterans, and our veterans who are struggling with PTSD and other health issues as a result of their service. Haven't seen it. And here is one of the ones that I find most ironic coming out of this campaign promises made to the people of Guam, is protecting our land. Yeah, our waters and our ocean. All we have to do is look at recent news stories right here where the governor is going to take land that the military was getting ready to release back to the original owners, but the governor interceded in the process and has convinced the federal government not to release the land that they were originally planning to release so that she can use it for her personal agenda. This is not fair to the people of Guam who have been deprived of use of their property for generations since World War II, and for the governor to step in and literally hijack this property that would have helped fill the dreams of many families on this island. And the families up there on Eagles Field are not the only ones. Full disclosure, my family also has suffered at the hands of government of Guam. When the Navy released property, our family lost 25 acres that was used to create Southern High School. We haven't received any compensation, nor have somewhere around 300 to 500 other families that have had their lands taken away from them by the government for road projects, government buildings, easements. Those families are still waiting to be compensated. I know people who are still paying taxes on land taken from them decades ago by the government of Guam to build government facilities, and they're still paying the taxes because they're hoping to preserve their claim. That shouldn't happen. In our case, you know, there was even a law passed in 2010 releasing the property to Ancestral Lands Commission. Our land, bear in mind, it's our land, and we're still waiting for that land to be released to our family. But that's because we're not politically well-connected insiders. Look at a different case right here. In the case of Lejean, some investors went in, bought a piece of land that was later condemned by the federal receiver. During the receival process, it was appraised at just under $3.5 million. The federal government paid $3.5 million for it. Then the Calvo administration was sued by the landowners, not the receiver. Government of Guam was sued by the landowners, and government of Guam basically capitulated and gave the landholders another $35 million. You see, that's the difference between being a politically well-connected insider and being Joe Citizen, because there are 500 to 700 families out there that have had land taken by government of Guam for use by government of Guam that have not been paid a single penny of compensation. But politically well-connected insiders, they move to the front of the line every time. And we let them get away with it when we don't hold politicians accountable for their actions. Remember, that piece of property was appraised at $3.5 million, and the taxpayers of Guam gave politically well-connected insider families $35 million, while 300 to 500, maybe as many as 700 families are still waiting for their compensation. Protecting our culture. Now that's a real interesting one, because we talk all the time about protecting our culture and protecting diversity, but this administration, more than any other administration, goes out of their way to drive a wedge into our community, to divide our people instead of appreciate and celebrate the diversity. And we need look no further than recent efforts by the governor to invite Spanish royalty to celebrate the 500th circumnavigation anniversary where Magellan landed on Guam and the Spanish crown enslaved our people. Now remember, this is the same administration that goes quarterly to the United Nations pleading for mercy and pleading for the United Nations to step in and protect our people from the oppressor. Well, who's the real oppressor here? The Spanish who enslaved us for 500 years that we willingly and gladly invite to our island to celebrate our enslavement? That's why I say this administration is driving a wedge into our community. And it goes further. I mean, in addition to going to the United Nations, now we're spending taxpayer dollars. And this is where I have a real issue. All the money that this administration and other administrations, it wasn't just this administration, Calvo administration and Camacho administration are guilty of it as well, taking taxes collected from everybody and you funneling those dollars into an effort to benefit a special, what they are considering a special segment of our community, indigenous people. So now it's one thing if the indigenous people of our island wanted to engage in an activity on their own without government funding, that is their right to do. But anytime that the government takes dollars collected from all of us to drive a wedge into our community to separate us into different categories, I have a problem with that. And if I had the money, I'd be doing a Dave Davis lawsuit on that type of an issue. But I don't have that kind of money, which leads us back to here we have on a regular basis the Committee on Decolonization, which puts forth this propaganda that the people of Guam are demanding to have their status changed. But the one thing that the Committee on Decolonization hasn't done is do any research on that. When I did, I discovered that 78% of the people of Guam prefer the existing status quo or statehood, closer ties with the United States. Only a small minority of people on Guam are pushing the independence bandwagon. But when you listen to Melvin Juan Pat Borja, you would think that there are hordes, there's torchlight parades going down Marine Corps Drive with tens of thousands of people chanting, "Set our people free," when nothing could be further from the truth. This is one of those lies that they tell us. When they campaign, they are going to put the people forward, but once they get in office, they're only going to take care of certain people. And that goes back to, could you roll the clip? Yeah, roll the clip, please.
Do you believe only native inhabitants of Guam or the Chamorro people should vote in a political status plebiscite? Why or why not?
Political status is a very serious, I think, movement for a government to do. We have not been given the opportunity to determine our political status. Other people have. And I support, and I have made it public, that I feel it should be just for native inhabitants, because then it really is a self-determination of our own native inhabitants.
And that's one of the biggest lies right there. When you listen to the testimony given by Josh Tenorio and others at the United Nations, you hear time and time again the lieutenant governor, the director of the Committee on Decolonization. We've even had senators testify that Guam is not self-governing. Well, excuse me, we have a governor, we have a lieutenant governor, we have a legislature, we have a court system. That kind of says we're self-governing. But for them to go forward to the United Nations and to the UNPO, whatever the hell that is, and claim that we are not governed. We have no ability to govern ourselves. That is a big lie. And as Joseph Goebbels said, the propaganda minister of the German army during World War II, if you say a big enough lie, loud enough and long enough, people believe it. We have been self-governing for a long time. And all we have to do is look at the fact that we're running an election to elect people to govern us at the administration level and at the legislature level and at the court level. Which brings us to, oh, I skipped one there accidentally. Okay, advanced technology infrastructure. For decades, we have known we've needed new technology. For 2 years, we've had over $1 billion go through government of Guam's hands, and you would think by now we would have had some investments in technology, knowing that we've needed it. But yet, we still do not have that technology. And in fact, the lack of technology at Guam Memorial Hospital is one of the biggest problems that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid have with the accreditation, which is jeopardizing millions of dollars in federal funding for our hospital. So as we go into this election season, remember, our politicians are running. They're asking us to give them a vote, to allow them to continue to stay in office. And we have to ask ourselves and ask them the hard questions. What have you done on the campaign promises you made in 2018 and 2020? How many of those promises have you completed for the benefit of the people of Guam? And if you don't like the answers you get from those people, do not vote for them. Let them know you are not going to vote for them. Let them know why you are not going to vote for them. And that is the only way we are going to change the behavior of Guam's politicians, because those who do not learn the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat them. So if we let our politicians continue to lie to us with no penalty, they will continue to lie to us. Only when we start holding them accountable for the lies they tell us will they begin to make an effort to make good on the promises they make on the campaign trail once they get into office. Now, we need to really be diligent about this, because there's a news story that the lawmakers failed to advance funding for early voting and the primary. Early voting is a good thing. You know, it allows more people to get in and vote. And that's something that incumbents don't want. Incumbent politicians make it as hard as possible for people to vote. We see that in the United States, where they're closing down mail-in voting. They're eliminating polling stations, forcing people to drive hours and hours to get to places where they can vote. And lines in those places are sometimes up to 5 to 10 hours just to vote. Here on Guam, we have a similar effort. In fact, in the first month of the Leon-Guerrero Tenorio administration, nearly 9,000 voters were deleted from voter rolls. And there's no reason for them to be deleted from voter rolls other than the fact that politicians like small numbers, because they know when small numbers vote, incumbents have the greatest chance of winning. And we saw that in 2020 when we had the lowest voter turnout ever, and all we saw were all incumbents and recycled senators get elected. So in order to make our island the place we always talk about it being, a great place for families and children, we need to change the people who are in positions of power and authority, because we can't expect those who broke the system to fix the system they broke, because we know they like it broken just the way it is. If we ever expect to change it, it's going to be up to us, not the politicians. So the best thing to do right now is to like this post and share this post with as many people as you can. Let's spread the word about how we as citizens can make our island a better place, because politicians have proved for the last 20 years they can't do it, or they would have done it. Call the Guam Election Commission or go online and make sure you are registered to vote. Because when politicians see the number of voters starting to climb, it might scare them into doing the right thing for the people of Guam for a change. But that lesson will only last if we vote, and we vote out of office politicians that have broken promises to them. And over the campaign, we'll highlight all the promises that were made by politicians that were broken, all those politicians who made promises that they kept or they tried to keep but were prevented from keeping, so that when we go into the voting booth, we can finally elect a legislature and a governor who are for the people, by the people, and of the people. I'm Ken Leon-Guerrero. This is my point of view. I know it was a long one today, but it was an important one because we're at a crossroads here. We either are going to let them keep lying to us and watch our quality of life continue to deteriorate, or we are going to start holding them accountable and make this island a better place for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you.